Hare Krishna. So, I'm back in ISKCON, Silicon Valley, ISV. The tip of the spear of the revival of the spirit, the preaching spirit that Srila Prabhupada breathed into us and into our ISKCON movement, especially in relationship to the attachment he had for disseminating widely Krishna consciousness through the distribution of his transcendental literature. So I'm feeling extremely enlivened to be back in this atmosphere. And I offer my gratitude to my best friend and godbrother, Vaisheshika Prabhu, for creating this atmosphere and managing it in such a way that it is improving. I haven't been here for more than a year, and I feel the atmosphere is improved, and not just in atmosphere, but in detail. You know, I go out had to use the bathroom, and there's nice shoes outside each bathroom, so that people can have the cleanliness standard. Like that, this is the tip of the spear. So, Hare Krishna. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. ISKCON Silicon Valley ki jai. Srila Prabhupada's Transcendental Book Distribution ki jai. Jayo Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari, Jayo Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari, Jayo Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Gopi Janabalaba Girivadadhari, Gopi Janabalaba Girivadadhari, Yashodanandana Braja Janaranjana, Yashodanandana Braja Janaranjana, Jamuna Tirabanachari, Jamuna Tirabanachari, Jayo Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari, Jayo Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari, Gopi Janabalaba Girivadadhari, Gopi Janabalabha Girivardhari Yashodanandana Braja Janaranjana Yashodanandana Braja Janaranjana Jamuna Tiravanachari Jamuna Tiravanachari Jayo Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jayo Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopi Janabalabha Girivardhari Gopi Janabalabha Girivardhari Yashodanandana Braja Janaranjana Yashodanandana Braja Janaranjana Jamuna Tiravanachari Jamuna Tiravanachari Jayo Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jayo Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jayo Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prishtaya Bhutale Shrimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Iti Namine Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prishtaya Bhutale Shrimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Iti Namine Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nibishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarine Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nibishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarine Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Panchatattva Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Jai Prabhupada Prabhupada, Jai Prabhupada. Jaya Jaya Prabhupada, 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 Jaya Jaya Prabhupada. Jaya Goda Nitai, Jaya Goda Nitai, Goda Nitai, Jaya Goda Nitai. Jaya Goda Nitai, Jaya Goda Nitai, Goda Nitai, Jaya Goda Nitai. Jai Shri Shri Radha, Madan Mohan Radha, Madan Mohan Radhe. Jai Shri Shri Radha, Madan Mohan Radha, Madan Mohan Radhe. Jai Shri Shri Radha, Madan Mohan Radha, Madan Mohan Radhe. Jayo Radhe, Jayo Radhe, Jayo Radhe, Jayo Shri Radhe. Nitai Gaur Haribo, 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 Nitai Gaur Haribo. Nitai Gaur Haribo, 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 Nitai Gaura Haribo. Gaur Premanandi. Jai Om Vishnupad Paramahamsa Parivrajikacharya Ashutarasata Sri Srimad His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. ISKCON Samstapakacharya BBT Samstapakacharya His Ever Loving Divine Grace Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Janitya Leela Pravishna Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur Maharaj Prabhupada Ki Jai. Ananta Koti Vaishnava Brinda Ki Jai. Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai. Shri Rup Sanatan Bhatta Raghunath Shri Gopala Bhatta Das Raghunath Satkhoshai Ki Jai. Pring Sagoho Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shri Vasadi Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai. Shri Shri Radha Krishna Gopa Gopinath Shyam Kund Radha Kund Giri Govardhan Ki Jai. Shri Vrindavan Dham Ki Jai. Shri Mayapur Navadvip Dham Ki Jai. Shri Jagannath Puri Dham Ki Jai. Ganga Mai Jamuna Mai Ki Jai. Shrimati Tulsi Devi Bhakti Devi Ki Jai. Gaur Premanandi. Shri Harinam Sankirtan Ki Jai. Shri Brihat Pridanga Ki Jai. Srila Prabhupada's Transcendental Book Distribution Ki Jai. Transcendental Mahaprasad Distribution Ki Jai. Samaveda Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories, all glories, all glories to Shri Shri Guru and Gauranga. Gaur Premanandi. Hari Hari Bol. Hare Krishna. Kudos again to Vaisheshika Prabhu because he's giving me this option to be a little spontaneous, because I know that you have a regulated schedule here and everyone's, including me, are very attached to it. But when I came in last night, I was kind of bubbling over with things to say, realizations that I've had about different things recently, especially coming back to America and having gained a kind of internal epiphany about spending more time in America to try to encourage and do what I can do in order to increase the preaching. Om Jnanatimidandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurun Militam Jena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobishtam Stapitam Jena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Gadamayam Dadhati Swapadantikam Mukam Karurivachalam Pangam Langayate Girim Yat Kripatamaham Bande Shigurun Dinataranam Namasheshtamanum Api Sachiputram Atrasarupam Rupam Tasyagrajim Urupurim Maturim Goshtavatim Radha Kundam Girivarmaho Radhika Madhavasam Prapto Yasya Pratita Kripiyo Shigurun Tannatosmi Vande Ham Shri Guru Shri Yuta Padakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavangscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raganathan Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Sadvadutam Purijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakhan Vitangscha Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prishtaya Bhutale Shrimate Bhaktivedanta Swamin Iti Namane Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharane Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarane Vanchakalpadurubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya Evacha Patitanam Pavanibhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shri Vasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Antaya Madalabala Haridasya Vayo Yad Rama Krishna Charana Sparasha Pramodaha Manam Tanoti Sahago Ganayostayo Yad Paniya Suyavasa Kandana Kandamulahai Matsamo Nasti Papatma Naparadi Nakaschana Parihare Pilajjame Kimbruve Purushottama Yupatinam Tatayuni Yunam Chayavatal Yata Mano Bidabate Tadvam Mano Me Ramatam Twai Bhumau Skalita Padanam Bhumireva Balambanam Twai Jatapadadhanam Twameva Sharanam Prabhu Govinda Balabe Radhe Prartye Twamaham Sada Tudiyam Iti Janatu Govindo Mam Twaya Saha Radhe Vrindavanadishe Karuna Mritavahini Kripaya Tavapadabja Dasyam Mayam Pradiyatam. Hare Krishna. If one makes an objective reading of all of Srila Prabhupada's letters and conversations, especially the letters, although letters give us an angle on the authority and teachings of Prabhupada that are sometimes time and circumstance. It may not be each individual instruction he's given is to be applied across the board to every situation and every devotee and every activity of the Krishna consciousness movement. But there's one theme in his letters that that does apply across the board to every person and every activity and every aspect of the Krishna consciousness movement. Can you guess what that word is, what that theme is? No? One person said, chant Hare Krishna, the other person said, book distribution, which is true. Absolutely. Cooperation, thank you. You got it. Third time's a charm. You didn't strike out. You got it 0 for 2 and you hit it out of the park. So I'm going to, this first talk, during my visit here, I'm going to base it on something which I've been talking about, and it's been kind of rising in my heart as a important theme that seems to be resonating wherever I go recently. And this is about cooperation. And I want to read from page 61 of the foundational document that was published and distributed by our governing body this year in Mayapur. And I want to kind of focus on this because there's lots and lots of important points, historical information about Srila Prabhupada's mood and why it was so successful at spreading Krishna consciousness around the world, more so than other efforts, or any other effort actually. And that is the principle of cooperation. And I want to read and comment as I'm reading. The name of the document is Srila Prabhupada, the founder Acharya of ISKCON. And it's in the Veda, not in the Veda base, but it's in the software. You may be able to find it. And it's on page 61, where Srila Prabhupada comes to a point of culmination of a series of letters that he wrote to his godbrothers when he first came to America, on the order of Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur. Srila Prabhupada gave this, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur gave this order to come to the West and preach, not just to Srila Prabhupada. Sometimes we hear the first thing that Prabhupada asked, first thing that Bhaktisiddhanta Srila Prabhupada asked our Prabhupada to do when he first met him, the first words out of his mouth was, "You're an educated young, man. Why don't you go to and spread Krishna consciousness in English?" And then, of course, at the end of Bhaktisiddhanta's life, Prabhupada wrote a letter to him asking what he could do to best serve him, because he was a grahasta and he felt that he couldn't serve fully as the sannyasis and brahmacharis were in the ashrams, in the mat, in the Gaudiya mat. And just a week or two before Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur left, he wrote a letter in return to Prabhupada and gave him exactly the same instruction as the first instruction he had given him in 1922. This was in 1936. And then Prabhupada took that as his life and soul, and the rest is history. But the principle that is the reoccurring theme in Prabhupada's letters. I'm not going to give examples of this because there's so many of them. It's common knowledge, actually. Whenever devotees would write letters to Prabhupada asking them to solve different things, different issues, individual clashes or clashes in opinions about what to do, what not to do, all these things, he would again and again and again stress the importance of cooperating. I just want you to cooperate together. And this is what makes Srila Prabhupada's movement unique, because it's the first time that, Lord Chaitanya's movement has been organized to this degree in a way that facilitated it spreading all over the world. And that's why one of the reasons why when I first sat down, I was giving kudos to my best friend, Vaisheshika Prabhu, for being so organized, and it reflects in ISKCON Silicon Valley, in the effort that you've made to organize your lives in such a way. You're all grahastas with mainly family duties and professional duties, and somehow or other you have caught this essence of spiritual life, that if you go out and try to spread the movement, to push it forward, then some magic happens, both externally and internally. The movement spreads, and we advance in Krishna consciousness. So what I'm going to do this morning is I'm going to read to you a very short excerpt. It's only like a page and a half or something from this literature in which Prabhupada is explaining the essence of how to advance in Krishna consciousness and spread the Krishna consciousness movement under the guidance of all the previous acharyas. The theme of these letters, in which he stressed cooperation, wasn't just how to get along and work in an individual activity and an individual relationship with this devotee or that devotee. There's something deeper behind this. And I want to touch that and try to go as deep as I can and promote perhaps this discussion while I'm here over the next 2 weeks. It begins with a letter that Srila Prabhupada wrote. And it's a very important letter, although it's not quoted very often, but it was written to a Gurukula teacher. And the things that happened in our Gurukula system probably was one of the biggest challenges that our movement has faced. And this letter to a Gurukula teacher, if it had been followed to the letter and spirit, and this is a very important point, not just the letter of the law, but the spirit of the law must be followed. The rule is not the master. The goal of Krishna consciousness is not just to follow the rule. The goal is to awaken our love for Krishna. So the purpose of the rule is to serve the goal of devotion. It's meant to bring us to the stage of pure devotion. So let's hear Srila Prabhupada's letter. I'm quoting a couple of letters, but in between there's a brilliant commentary, which I will also speak about as we go along. Here's the letter. We are persons. Oh, see what I mean? See? This is practical. He told me, he said, I'll be able to bring up on the screen whatever you want to quote. I said, yeah, right. In my illusion, I thought I could one-up my best friend, which it never works out because he's got it together. And there it is, right there on the screen. For all of you out there in the audience, listen up. Hare Krishna. Wish you were here. We are persons, and Krishna is a person. And our relationship with Krishna is always open as a voluntary agreement. That voluntary attitude, yes, Krishna, I shall gladly cooperate, whatever you say. That ready willingness to obey is only possible if there is love. Forcing will not make me agree. But if there is love, oh, I shall gladly do it. That is bhakti. That is Krishna consciousness. So to promote this spirit of cooperation, which is based on love and genuine affection for one another, is the essence of spiritual life, and it's the essence of what will make our Krishna consciousness movement viable over time, and even presently powerful and empowered to help the conditioned souls now in the Kali Yuga, all over the world, who are suffering like anything. So this is the commentary. This commentary was written by Ravinda Sarup. All kudos to Ravinda Sarup. I know he's probably not listening, but if someone out there knows him, please tell him what I'm saying right now. He wrote a brilliant commentary on this letter. And when the draft of this was presented before the SGGS, the Sannyasi Guru GBC Sangha Symposium 2 years ago, there were many of us who found different parts of it that we couldn't quite, cooperate with in our minds. And he went back after taking the input and kind of did a rewrite, and what came out was, as far as I can see, as close to being spot on as we can get with our present abilities. Cooperation is the vital principle of all healthy social relationships, and it attains its highest application in divinity. The Lord is supremely personal. Therefore, He is supremely social. For personhood becomes manifest only in relationships with other persons. Now, I'm going to maybe comment a little bit as we go along to try to bring out these points and how they apply in our day-to-day lives, both within the context of the temple situation and the movement, and also in our own personal lives, in our family lives, and how that relates to the spiritual world and where we're going. We have different relationships with our family members, with our friends, with our governments, with our whatever. But what makes us persons is when we interact with those entities and those persons in relationship. It's not that we're individuals apart from one another and going to Krishna in that way. The original relationships in the spiritual world are the same as the relationships that we have here. 15th chapter of the Gita, Krishna explains that this material world is like a reflection of the spiritual world, and therefore the things that you see here are also there, but there's differences. The principle of reflection means that the things we see here, just like the image in the mirror that we see when our image is when our body is reflected in the mirror, it looks like us. And if it's a good mirror and the light's just right, it looks exactly like us. Or, now they have holograms where they can make somebody like stand in the middle of the room and look like the person. But there's differences, when we raise our right hand, our left hand raises in the mirror. In the ambulance, they print the word ambulance backwards so that people can see what's going on in their rear view mirror, and they can see, oh, this is an ambulance, and they can cooperate and, move out of the way so it can get to its life and death, goal. And when we touch the mirror, we don't feel the warmth and the personhood of the original form. And when we step away from the mirror, that form disappears. So these are the principles of reflection that allow us to see something of what the spiritual world is like here, but not completely. But we get fooled by that reflection, by that mirage. We get fooled. Just like an animal in an oasis, has water and it's in a desert. So there's water, so he's in a good situation. But he looks out into the desert and he sees this vast body of water, like an ocean. And he looks out and he just forgets that he's there with water and he's safe. But he goes out into the desert looking for that vast body of water, and it keeps going away from him. The farther he gets closer to it, it goes away from him, and then he dies in the desert. This is the situation in the material world. But the principle that there's water somewhere. There's water somewhere. It's just not where he's looking. It's not in the desert. The relationships that we want and we look for and we try to relish here in this material world, neutrality, servitude, friendship, parental, conjugal, amorous relationships, they're here and they're real in the sense that they're there somewhere, but we're looking in the wrong place. We're looking to do it with material bodies which have their limitations in order to be able to exchange those relationships, because even if you find your soulmate and if you can stay with them your whole rest of your life, and even if the love has come to the point where you're all feeling like, we're all feeling like this is it, the personhood has manifested, as said. Personhood is manifest in relationships with other persons. Now I'm finally a person because I'm having a relationship with another person here in this world, in this relationship or that relationship. But then, what? Then I'm forced. I'm forced to separate from that person. Sure. As sure as death. For that reason, as Srila Prabhupada said many times, Krishna is never alone. We don't develop the personal relationships just by being in a nuclear family situation. And this is why this yatra is so successful, because you have been able to, by the grace of a pure devotee, Srila Prabhupada and his representative, Vaisheshika Prabhu, have been able to step out and expand your conception of what love is, outside of just the nuclear family situation, and you've been able to be inspired to go out, and to help others share in real personal relationship, which means relationships in relationship to Krishna. That's the Sankirtan movement. Krishna is never alone. On one occasion, Prabhupada noted, when we speak of Krishna, Krishna means Krishna with his devotees. This is a lecture, quoted from a lecture on January 10th, 1969 in Los Angeles. The Lord's devotees even become integral to his own identity. Krishna's own names often illustrate this fact by including names of his intimate devotees. Yashodanandana. That's the name of Krishna. But where's Krishna's name in that? that name is made up of Yashoda, his mother, and Ananda, what he feels about her and what she feels about him. And these are Krishna's favorite names. I mean, you know, we may be coming into an airport somewhere in some foreign country, we don't speak the language, and we have an important thing to do, and the person who was supposed to meet us didn't come. And there we are, you know, like, we don't know what to do, can't understand what anybody's saying, we don't have any money to do anything, we don't even know to read the signs to go to get the money, and we're just like bewildered. And then all of a sudden, through the loudspeaker, we hear our name. Oh, wow, what a relief. Krishna likes to hear his name. Just like we like to hear his name. Krishna likes to hear his names. But the most favorite names are those names that are in relationship to his most intimate devotees. There are primary names and there are secondary names. The secondary names describe Krishna's qualities, you know, all-powerful, you know, all-pervasive, all this and all that, controller, this and that. But the names that actually, the primary names, are the names that are in relationship with his most intimate devotees. And as the relationship becomes more intimate, the sweeter that names become, and the more attractive they become to Krishna. Yashodanandana, Ramanuja, Radharaman, and so on. Thus, the supremely absolute is at the same time supremely relative. This is a wonderful application of Lord Chaitanya's ultimate philosophy of spirituality. Acintya-bhedabheda tattva. Simultaneous oneness and difference. Everything in our movement, everything in our lives as devotees is permeated by this philosophy of acintya-bhedabheda tattva. And therefore, to understand what we're doing, to understand Krishna, to understand each other, we have to actually assimilate this philosophy. Acintya-bhedabheda tattva. Here it says, thus, the supremely absolute is at the same time supremely relative. That's acintya-bhedabheda tattva. He's supremely absolute. That's supremely absolute means he must be only that. But he's also supremely relative. And he's also supremely that. Jiva Goswami in his Bhakti Sandarbha says that unless you can accept and assimilate this idea, acintya, the first part of this philosophy is acintya-bhedabheda tattva. He's inconceivably, simultaneously, one with and different from everything in his creation. So, thus the supremely absolute is at the same time supremely relative, entering into relationships with all varieties of individual devotees. He has a relationship with each one of us, and he has a relationship with all of us at the same time. As a result, all those diversities become increasingly integrated into a more perfect union. Now we're touching this idea that I'm trying to bring out. That Prabhupada's essence of his teachings was that we should cooperate together in order to please Krishna. That's what the Varnashram means. Unless you have all the ashrams working together to please Krishna, you don't have the Varnashram. It's not that the Varnashram means now we're developing the Varnashram system in ISKCON and I can get out from underneath the authority of the temple commander or the temple president or the GBC or whatever and go out somewhere and have my grahastha life with the principles of Krishna based on those things and actually be complete and please Krishna. Sankirtan movement is meant to be the practical the conclusion of the evolution of social relationships. Therefore, when Ramananda Roy was responding to the questions of Lord Chaitanya, He started out by giving the principles of Varnashram, and Lord Chaitanya didn't reject it. He just said, that's external, so maybe you could explain something more. And he went deeper and deeper until he finally came to the relationships that Krishna has in the spiritual world. So here, Rabindra is saying, as a result, all those diversities become increasingly integrated into a more perfect union. In such a way, a transcendent relativity is manifest as a society. In such a way, a transcendent relativity is manifest as a society of the utmost harmonious cooperation. You see, this is what Prabhupada was trying to stress to us about cooperation, how important it is that we cooperate together, from the littlest thing, to the biggest thing. Because it creates an atmosphere that transcends mundane relativity and enters into transcendent relativity. That's a society. This is the Sankirtan movement of Lord Chaitanya, to try to develop a society within the modes of material nature, within the material world, which becomes transcendent by our application of this principle of cooperation. And through the conduct of those relationships, listen to this, through the conduct of those relationships, that means Krishna is having a relationship with all of his devotees, and all of his devotees are having a relationship with Krishna individually. From Krishna's point of view, he's looking at the whole thing. From our individual point of view, we're thinking of our relationship with Krishna. But Krishna's trying to tell us this is a complete picture. Therefore, through the conduct of those relationships and his of those relationships, the Lord and his associates eternally increase in beauty, opulence, bliss, and knowledge. This is how you can know whether you're going in the right direction, both as individuals and as a yatra. The Sankirtan movement's the biggest yatra, and we're all parts of that yatra, the same and different one simultaneously. That was Prabhupada's ideal understanding of what ISKCON is. And this book brings it out in a very wonderful way. I don't know if we're going to have time to discuss that part of it, but we will, while we're here, go deeper into that point about how that cooperative spirit is meant to make our yatras, us as individuals, spiritually strong, our yatras spiritually strong, and the whole movement, the combination of all the yatras under the direction of the GBC body, strong in a way that Krishna consciousness will spread all over the world. Not just one aspect of Krishna consciousness. The Krishna consciousness means the awakening of the relationships that we have with Krishna and with one another in relationship with Krishna. Now, this next paragraph is a very important one because it talks about what the goal is, salvation. Without this principle, salvation comes something else. Salvation, I'm thinking about me. How do I get out of here? This place is suffering. I'm suffering so much. Get me out of here. That's salvation. Right? And now the technology has come to the point where everybody's thinking, I can get out of here by just... Everywhere you go now, it's the same. I was in the airports, in the airplanes. Everyone's like this. They look like this. I saw this one couple in this airport. I was coming from India, and they were obviously a couple, and they were obviously having a vacation, and they were sitting like just here to here, and they were like this the whole time. I was standing there waiting, sitting there waiting for a flight. So I sat there I get early there to the airport. I like to get early to the airport. And they were sitting there for a long time like this. They didn't move. I got the feeling maybe they're texting each other. Maybe they're having a conversation, texting one another. I remember one time in one temple, I won't mention the names of the temple because maybe I'd make an offense to somebody, or maybe they'd think I'd make an offense. But anyway, this was when email first came out. This was before there was texting and all this. And email came out, and there were these two devotees that were like very close to the top of the organization. And they used to email each other. Their offices were right next together. And they used to email each other in order to... So listen to this. Salvation for a Gaudiya Vaishnava means socialization into this highest society. Why Prabhupada stress so much society? Why he stress so much cooperation? Why he stress so much that we come together and do this? Because we can't do this individually. We know this. This has been promoted so nicely here in ISV. When you go out, there's no individual scores here. Everybody's got a group score. And they're feeling together, more together as a group. When you put all the results together, the different groups, you're winning. So everyone can feel, like they're winning, without having that pressure of, I'm winning, and what if I don't do this? What if I don't do that? Then what's going to happen? Then Salvation for a Gaudiya Vaishnava means socialization into this highest society. Being accepted, for example, into the company of the 6 Goswamis, or into that circle of gopis who may serve Rati Manjari or Lalita Saki. Interesting, isn't it? How this point is being made in this context of this particular, literature, which is a foundational document by the GBC body trying to teach us how to cooperate underneath their, underneath Prabhupada's authority as the founder Acharya. And thus right here, it's saying we're doing this because we want to be able to move in the society in Goloka Vrindavan. So this is the way to see. I live in Govardhan. I've lived in Govardhan for 20 years. I have seen so many people come out of ISKCON, try to go to Radhakund, and then they think, now we have got the highest thing. Now we have got a real guru, and you guys back in ISKCON are just, off or something. The very institution that has actually delivered them, that has given them salvation, that has given them the information that would allow them to even know to go to Radhakund. Without ISKCON, without Prabhupada, without the devotees, without this society that's taught these things, they wouldn't even know. And yet they're turning around and looking back and looking down and thinking, we have something higher. So therefore we should avoid the temptation of thinking in terms of higher and lower. In the spiritual world, everything is higher. There's no relativity. Things are absolute, but there's still diversity. There's still variety. There's still differences. And even in Vraj, for instance, Shrimati Radharani and their relationship, they're recognized as the highest thing. But nobody's trying to go there and become a gopi. Cowherd boys don't think, oh, now this is the highest, therefore I should change my body and go and be a gopi. They're not thinking like that because they're completely satisfied in their relationship with Krishna as a cowherd boy or as a parental figure or as a servant. Or even in one sense, a neutral relationship as a tree or a flower or a body of water or whatever. Of course, in Goloka Vrindavan, it's not neutral. There's no Shantaras in Goloka Vrindavan. It's all tinged with Madhurya Ras, because everyone is there cooperating together to make Radha and Krishna's relationship more perfect. Now, let's hear about the opposite. Damnation. Interesting word, choice of words. Right from there, he goes, damnation is the opposite. Isolation and exclusion. They're all like birds, you know. If you come up to them, they're becoming birds, you know. Let me fly away from this. Let me fly away from that. Damnation is just the opposite. Isolation and exclusion. So what's isolating us? That's the next answer. What is it that's isolating us? We self-alienated, non-cooperative living entities, living here in exile. That's what is happening here. We're living here in the material world in exile from the spiritual world. This isn't the place where we belong. Can anyone think that I belong in exile? Exile is something that you do when you want to get rid of somebody who's creating enough disturbance that the only place that they can exist without disturbing others is in some desert island somewhere. We self-alienated, non-cooperative living entities, living here in exile, isolated in solitary confinement by the impervious walls of our egoism. I mean, this is one of the most beautiful comments I've ever heard about conditioned life. Ravindra, if you can ever get this, if anybody sends you this, just know that I'm deeply grateful for this comment. Well, even you're in jail. What's the worst punishment in jail? Solitary confinement. They're all trying to avoid it. They're in jail. They're in the worst situation you can be, and yet they're trying to avoid solitary confinement. They want to work in the library or serving out the meals to the secretary to the whatever they call a warden, whatever. They don't want to be in solitary confinement. Nobody does. Even you're the biggest rascal, murderer, biggest rascal, still they don't want to be in solitary confinement. They'll have nobody to harass. They get their pleasure out of making other people suffer. What kind of pleasure am I going to get in solitary confinement? Therefore, solitary confinement is the worst punishment, and that's what's going on here. We're a spiritual being, and we're covered by a material body which is isolating us from others and from the spiritual world and from Krishna. But even from that position, we are always summoned to return as fully integrated members of that transcendent society. And bhakti yoga is the practice by which we become fit to rejoin it. That's what bhakti yoga is. It's the process by which we are becoming fit to rejoin the transcendent society in the spiritual world. And what is the manifestation of that transcendent society in this world? Lord Chaitanya's Sankirtan movement. That information was brought down and is being brought down through 4 disciplic successions, through the Adi Gurus, and then the founder acharyas. In the Kali Yuga, there was a need for founder acharyas for those original lines of disciplic succession. This is explained very nicely in this book also, how it all comes together. And Lord Chaitanya brings the essence of those teachings, of those 4 different lines of authority, and brings them into one teaching. And in the Bhavishya Purana, there's a prediction that at some point in the Kali Yuga, therefore, all of these lines of authority will come into one authority. That is the Sankirtan movement of Lord Chaitanya. By bhakti, we become increasingly integrated into the divine society, closer to Krishna and closer to his associates. And at the same time, we try to bring others with us. That is the Sankirtan movement. That is ISV. It's the essence of life, the essence of relationship, the essence of Krishna consciousness. And this is the highest yoga. Now we have this whole trend towards going out to the yoga societies. I went on a preaching program. First one I've been at a yoga society in a very, very, very long time. And it was with some of the youth who were really nice. Dallas, Texas, really professional chanters, professional musicians, players of the instruments. It was like world-class Sankirtan. And they invited me to come. So I sat, and they had a little chanting, and then they had me speak. Then they had a little chanting, and they had me speak. Then they had a little chanting. That's kind of like the new format. But then afterwards, I got this wonderful letter back from one of the leading youth, younger devotees, appreciating that, Maharaj, you were talking Krishna consciousness. As if that was a surprise. Because they say, now we do it according to a new mood where you just chant and you don't say very much. Thinking that that's going to make them, I don't know, it will, of course. They're chanting Hare Krishna, so that will make them favorable. But that's not the way of Lord Chaitanya's movement. It's not Srila Prabhupada's mood or style. We're being summoned by the founder Acharya of ISKCON, which means the movement that has been reconstituted of Lord Chaitanya's movement, which has been reconstituted by Bhaktivinoda Thakur, because it was fallen apart by that time. He brought it together, started to organize it, realized he couldn't finish, prayed for a ray of Vishnu. Bhaktisiddhanta came from the spiritual world as that ray of Vishnu and further organized it. And then he asked his disciples, his leading disciples, to form a governing body and conduct the mission cooperatively, which implies that none of you are actually capable of doing what I'm doing, which is being the one person that everyone will accept. And then what happened? Then they didn't do it, and the Gaudiya Math fell apart, at least as a total entity, as a total society. Fell apart into mats, in which the same system, which was traditional in India, where there's a spiritual master and disciples, initiating spiritual master and disciples, and that's what the society is. But it's in the rest of the world, it doesn't work, because in the rest of the world, the whole society isn't supportive. In India, it's supportive. Therefore, it's still thriving, actually, our movement. But Prabhupada left India in disgust, because he wasn't getting that kind of support. And he came to America, and they gave him that kind of support. Both the government and the individuals who joined the movement. And therefore, he was able to spread Krishna consciousness very quickly all over the world in its pure form. So therefore, this point about Prabhupada being the founder of Acharya is not meant to interfere with the relationships of the individual guru and disciple now in the movement underneath the umbrella of the GBC. It's meant to help us learn to cooperate. And that's the point I'm making. This is the essence of Prabhupada's teaching. To cooperate together, to please Krishna in our different relationships. Not that we have to all become one with one another and have the same relationships and be in the same position. No. The variety and the oneness is together in this movement, in its most evolved form. And that takes us where? To the society in the spiritual world. Srila Prabhupada said in 1968 in San Francisco, if you push on this movement of Krishna consciousness, then you'll be performing the highest type of yoga. Don't be misled by so-called yogas. You know what happened in that society, that meeting we had at the club? At the end, they all stood up and they started dancing. They got out of their yoga postures like this during the talk, and they're all like. And then after they heard what we had to say and experienced the kirtan, one of the devotees stood up, and they all, yeah, that's right, and they all stood up and they started dancing. Therefore, I got that letter back from this young devotee. Maharaj, this was good. And usually what we do is we don't really say anything about, Krishna yoga system, Bhagavad Gita, Krishna. And I ended up with the lecture of reading the description of Krishna's personal form that Gopakumar saw at the Brihat Bhagavatamrita. We went right from the beginning to the end, and everyone was in ecstasy. We don't have to be afraid. We don't have to be afraid of looking like devotees when we go out. We don't have to be afraid of what we say. I mean, we have to be careful. We have to say it with realization. We don't have to be afraid. People are getting up to here. When Vaishya and I joined, it was like there was an identifiable counterculture. A whole bunch of young people who were looking and acting the same, in opposition to what was going on in secular America. But now you don't find any there's so many of them, and they're all merged together. And they're acting in a way to try to we went to on Harinam Sankirtan and book distribution in Denver, just Krishna's here with us. We went, he took me out. I hadn't been out like that on the street for a very long time. I mean, I'd been 15, 16 years in seclusion editing books, just in a box. But I got out, and yet, guess what? Coincidentally, there was a gay pride parade. Coincidentally, moving through this area where we were chanting and trying to distribute books. I saw everything. I mean, I had never seen anything like it in my life. Either taking off the clothes or putting on clothes to make each one of them stand out as different than everyone else. And yet the result of it was when you looked at it, they all just merged in this one insanity. But here I was, I never put on anything different. I never even think about putting on anything different. Every same thing, same everything. And everybody was looking at me. Like I stood out. They're all like, some of the outfits were like unbelievable. Individually, but when you put them all together, they all look the same. But there I was, everyone. We stand out. Now we go to an airport and everybody's dressed in black and dark gray and this and that. And we come in looking like everybody immediately. So the materialists are trying to stand out, but they don't. And then what has to happen? They have to look a little bit more outlandish every year. This is the fashion industry. They have to look a little bit more outlandish every year so they can try to stand out. And then it's all merging together now. You know, you got people with, you know, barbs and, you know, things coming out of their body, protruding, and their hair looking like this, and like purple and chartreuse and orange, and the clothes are like you can't even tell what they are. And it's all an expression of wanting to be individual, different. And that's the way we were when we were hippies, you know, it's the same. We used to think, remember in the beginning, we had our long-haired wigs and we would go out and just approaching a certain kind of people thinking it's the counterculture. These people will be, you know, attracted to us, and the rest, you know, they don't like us anyway. So, but then we learned gradually, didn't we? We learned gradually that actually everybody was interested. Therefore, Prabhupada says, in 1968 in San Francisco, even before we were doing that, he knew what was going to happen. If you push on this movement of Krishna consciousness, then you'll be performing the highest type of yoga. Don't be misled by so-called yogas. This is yoga. Yoga means cooperation. Just see how brilliant this is being brought together. Yoga means cooperation. Cooperation with the Supreme. Bhakti is the yoga of cooperation. Of all spiritual societies in this world, the Sankirtan movement most fully leads us into this transcendent cooperation. Since Sankirtan is the Yuga Dharma, there'll be a chapter in Vaish's book about this. Don't worry, it will come. Don't worry. I promise. Since Sankirtan is the Yuga Dharma in this age of quarrel, we will return to the kingdom of Krishna not as isolated individuals but all together. And this is what Prabhupada meant when he said, we will have another ISKCON there. Hare Krishna. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Srila Prabhupada Sankirtan movement ki jai. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu ki jai. ISV ki jai. Book distribution ki jai. Harinam Sankirtan ki jai. The distribution of Srila Prabhupada and transcendental prasadam to the public ki jai. Hare Krishna. Any comments, questions, corrections, chastisements?
Thank you so much, Maharaj, for a wonderful lecture. And I had one question about, you mentioned about isolation, but sometimes the nature of some devotees is that they're very introvert and they don't like to socialize so much, so they just want to be by themselves. So how should we deal with those kind of devotees, and how should
first thing is to realize that they don't want to be just by themselves. No one does. Prabhupada used to use these examples. If people who were like that, then he would ask them questions. So, you know, if what you really want to do is just be by yourself alone, then we offer you this. Here's a room. All the walls and ceilings and floor is white. Yeah. And you can go in there and you can stay there forever alone. Will that be attractive? They may say like that, they may think like that, but that's just their conditioning. There are different natures. There are residents of the spiritual world that live out in the forest and just maintain a kunj with all the different things that you need, that the divine couple need. And they live like that. They don't live in Nandagram and the forest. So that nature is there. Some are like, but they're not, they don't want to be alone. they're doing that in preparation for Radha and Krishna to come and all their associates, and then they become in ecstasy. So we have to gently and by our own expertise in our dealings to attract them into the society. Not that we push, each other to become like us in order to be acceptable. Even Prabhupada, when he came to the West, he would sometimes make this point very strongly. I never told them to change their dress. I never told them to become Hindus. I never said that. He just preached Krishna consciousness, and he was so fully Krishna conscious that we wanted to look like him. We wanted to be like him. And what ended up happening was we got it. Oh yeah, this is the way they look in the spiritual world. So etc., etc. This is the way they behave. Therefore, at the beginning of the reading was very relevant to this point. Something? No, does that answer something?
Yes, yes.
It addresses the point?
Yes.
Okay.
Hare Krishna Maharaj, Danvat Pranam.
Who is this?
Pratibha from Sacramento Maharaj, Danvat Pranam.
I couldn't understand.
Sacramento, Pratibha, she wants to answer the question of...
Hare Krishna, Pratibha?
Yes,
Pratibha.
am I clear?
Sacramento.
Pratibha. Yes.
I was raised in Northern California, just north of Sacramento. Or in Oroville.
Oh yeah, I've been there.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Kindred spirit. How are you?
Thank you, Maharaj.
How are you?
I'm doing great, Maharaj.
Oh,
Thank
good.
you. Especially after your lecture, even better.
Oh, good. It's good to know that I've done something positive in my life.
Certainly. Maharaj, we just had a lecture, last lecture from Vaisheshika Maharaj, and it was on tolerance. And
On tolerance.
Yes.
Now
and
speak a
then
little
also,
slower. Don't speak so
Sure.
fast. The words are getting kind of merging together. I can't understand exactly what you're saying. I want to hear directly from you, not by somebody translating the English into English.
Okay. So, the lecture on tolerance, and today we heard so much about cooperation, and that ties in so perfectly. And it was a beautiful lecture. Thank you so much. And then my question is, I understand that cooperation is what Prabhupada emphasized a whole lot, but if you do your best to get every opportunity to associate with the devotees, but sometimes it's not possible, then just doing your sadhana at your home will give you same results, or you should make even more effort to get more association of the devotees.
I will answer your question by explaining a question that was given to Srila Prabhupada early on in our movement, when the monastic beginnings, when all of us were just single, living in temples, in brahmacharya and brahmacharini lifestyles, most of us. There were a few grahastas, but not many. There was one lady in Los Angeles who got married and then had a baby. And she asked a question at the end of one lecture to Prabhupada. Srila Prabhupada, now I have this baby and I can no longer do direct service so much. So should I reorganize my life so that I can do more direct service? Prabhupada didn't even hesitate for a second. He said, no, you should become Krishna conscious. Because when you're Krishna conscious, there's no such thing as direct and indirect.
Jay.
If you become fully Krishna conscious, there's no such thing as direct and indirect. And then he explained to her that raising that child is, in Krishna consciousness, is an extremely important devotional service. And then he said, so you should worship that child as if it's a deity. But then he didn't didn't mean it, that child should become Krishna. Raise a child to become Krishna conscious, a devotee of Krishna. Prabhupada said, if you make one person a pure devotee, your success is guaranteed. One person. But what will happen as a result of doing that? You'll want to be with the devotees more. And gradually, when you come to the point where you can retire, and rather than going out in a Winnebago somewhere, and in the Grand Tetons, or and just being out there thinking you're free and you don't have to work anymore, and being bored stiff by looking at a canyon, then you'll, come in to the transcendent society. The answer is there in this reading that we just gave. There's individual and there's collective, and they're both relevant and they're both true simultaneously. So if you're in a particular situation, not everyone can. The difficulty is to see things in terms of black and white. That's the difficulty. It's either this or it's that. Either I'm a devotee living in a temple and whatever, or I'm in my house and I'm not a devotee. That's not Krishna consciousness. Nothing is ever black and white. Not only in terms of where we are in an organization, but also in the evolution of our consciousness. I may not be able to do as much as I will be able to do in the future if I continue the process. Because Krishna consciousness is a process. And it's meant to be undertaken throughout one's whole life. One time a person asked Prabhupada, how long does it take to perfect your chanting? You know what Prabhupada said? 40 years. He said 40 years. To give us, it's not that he meant, okay, now 40 years is up and I'm not Krishna conscious, therefore, what's wrong with me? That's the black and white consciousness. We shouldn't sleep, more than a certain number of hours. If I don't, then there are devotees in the beginning that once probably heard about these things, they began to try to sleep less and less when they weren't really ready to do that, when they weren't advanced enough to do that, and they became sick in different ways, physically and mentally in so many ways. Yukta hari viharasya, yukta chetusa karmasu, yukta swapna babodasya, yogo bhavati dukkha. You can't perform yoga, and this is what we're reading about was bhakti yoga, the perfection of yoga, with eating too much or too little, or sleeping too much or too little, or having too much fun or not having enough. The word diversion is right there in the verse. And as we gradually take the process properly, then we will want to be more and more absorbed in Krishna consciousness. And that wanting will naturally take us into more absorption in devotional activities. And eventually we'll, when it comes to the time in our life when we'll be able to, and that is another thing. Prabhupada wanted our movement to be set up in such a way as it will give facility to promote, living facilities and whatever for vanaprasthas. Because there's a lot of talk about varnashram in our society now. And Prabhupada's, the last half of his instructions is how we live in varnashram and all that. But it's kind of, it's evolved into a situation where varnashram means you have to be a grahastha living in a farm somewhere to be in the varnashram. The varnashram means all the ashrams working together in order to please Krishna. That's what varnashram is. It's not unless you're doing this, or unless you're doing that, or unless you're doing this particular activity or that particular activity. That's what the varnashram system is. If you look at, get this up, Bhagavad Gita 248, purport. This is great. I like this too much. I like this too much. Bhagavad Gita 248. last paragraph of the purport. Arjuna is a Kshatriya, and as such he is participating in the Varna Ashram Dharma institution. It is said in the Vishnu Purana that in the Varna Ashram Dharma, the whole aim is to satisfy Vishnu. No one should satisfy himself, as is the rule in the material world, but one should satisfy Krishna. So unless one satisfies Krishna, one cannot correctly observe the principles of Varnashram Dharma. It became kind of a way of the brahmacharis and brahmacharinis to get out from underneath, the authority of their temple commanders or temple president. It became like that. But that's not what Varnashram is. Varnashram is we all cooperate in order to please Krishna, and in the ultimate manifestation of it, the Sankirtan movement, we're all cooperating to please our founder Acharya and our Guru and Krishna, Lord Chaitanya, by bringing other people into this nectar of life. But I'm way over. I'm 10 minutes after, and I was told I should go until 9 o'clock, and I have to stop now. Hare Krishna.
Maharaj, we welcome you back to ISV. Your profound realizations accumulated over a lifetime of strict practice of sadhana bhakti with complete fidelity to your spiritual master, and your application of the principle of giving mercy to others at every moment has brought these profound realizations, and we thank you for coming and nourishing us with your katha. Please welcome back His Holiness Kesava Bharati Goswami. And now we're going to take a 5-minute break, which means we're going to convene here at 17 minutes after the hour. Everyone gets a break except for Priya Kishori. She's, during the intermission, 5-minute intermission, is going to recite the Purusha Sukta for us while we're each getting into our places. So take a break, stand up, get ready, come back, and Priya Kishori, please recite the Purusha Sukta. Thank you.
Hare Krishna. The feeling is mutual. Hare Krishna.